Hello again, guys. It's Carly from the Poetry of Nights, and I'm sort of using the medium of video to answer a few questions today. So I've been asked the same question several times in the comments, and rather than try and reply to everybody individually, I figured I'd just throw a video up, try and keep it succinct, and just let you guys know how I go about deciding where to list things, i.e. do I list them on Etsy, do I list them on eBay, or do I cross post? So as most people know, the parameters for eBay are far and wide. You can pretty much list anything apart from fur, ivory, the usual things, right? Etsy is a little bit more specific. Etsy is either a handmade good that you have made yourself, or someone in your company, in your shop, or vintage goods. And vintage to Etsy is anything 20 years old or older. So that is 1996 and older than that. So technically, I mostly deal in vintage things, and so technically I could cross post almost everything, but I don't. And that is where I think some people have gone ahead and asked me some questions about how I decide, basically, what are my sort of parameters for deciding that. So without further ado, I'll just kind of leap in and let you know my train of thought on what I do. Now, I'm by no means an expert. I experiment. That's all you can do really in this business, and things chop and change anyway as the seasons change and demographics change and all that kind of stuff. So someone asked me specifically about these Mario dolls. So they're very vintage. They are 1988, and they most certainly could have been listed on Etsy, but I did not. I only listed them on eBay. And so my reasoning for this, so I picked them up 50 cents each, and they sold for $40. They sold on eBay, and they sold within about 10 days of listing. I took a best offer, which I was happy with. So the reason why I put them up on eBay and not onto Etsy is I did my research. So here's my completed, my solds and things. So these are recents. So this guy here, this is me anyway. So as you can see here, when you scroll down, you can see that these individual dolls, he's a little bit different, but these individual dolls from the same era are selling pretty consistently for a decent price. There's a few gaps there, but you can see, especially Luigi, he's doing well, etc., etc. And so what I'd also seen when I went through was there was one pair, not this guy, these are the 24-inch, these are a little bit different, but the little 9-inch tall plush that I had. There was another pair as well that had sold for around $50 when I had checked those complete listings, and they were going, like I said, they were going consistently. So I felt like I was going to go ahead and get a quick sale. I had a pair, obviously, others did not, and so that gave me kind of a leg up over the competition for anybody who was looking for a pair. So I figured that I could move them pretty quickly and at a price I would be really happy with. And I was right. I got $40, less than 2 weeks. So I figured I was going to go ahead and save the listing fees. I was also going to save the time that it takes to list on Etsy, because it does take a little bit more effort to list on Etsy. You just, you have your keywords and your tags that need to be thought through so that it's effective for the SEO of Etsy. Otherwise, you are just never going to be found if your SEO is not good. You're just going to loiter in with the thousands of whatever. I also had a look. So these are what were showing up for the Mario Brothers 1988. So it looks like one person had a plush there. I don't think it was not exactly the same as mine. So, technically I could have gone ahead and cornered that part of the market, right? Because there was no others up there. Perhaps that could have gone in my favor. It potentially absolutely could have. However, when I go into Etsy and I start typing, and these, what you see popping up here as I type are like sort of automated, pre-generated search terms. Basically, these are things that people search for frequently. So vintage Mario does not show up. Vintage Super Mario does not turn up. That's showing me that Mario and Super Mario Brothers and things are not a commonly searched for thing on Etsy. So that again gives me an indication that the market is perhaps a little bit slimmer on Etsy, whereas obviously on eBay, it was really flourishing at that time for those particular plush. So I just went ahead, I listed them on eBay, and it did work out in my favor. So I was very pleased with that. So that was my train of thought there of just solely listing those little Mario guys on on eBay. Here's another example of things that I although they're vintage and I could cross post, I frequently do not. So this is a Bible that I sold, I think this last week, for $30 on eBay. So it's 1966. It is obviously vintage, so therefore I can list it on Etsy. These are all the Bibles I also have listed on eBay right now. I pretty much do not cross post Bibles. Now I've done an experiment. This guy at the top here, just because he's really cool. I love the decor side of him. So I've decided to cross post him on Etsy just to kind of have a feel and see what the market is doing there. But overall, I have yet to sell a Bible on Etsy. Perhaps it's the wrong marketplace for that. Perhaps the demographic is not the one that I need to be trying to reach with old Bibles. Now, these are the sort of biblical related things I do have on Etsy, and I'm comfortable with cross posting. I have my lots of book decor. I do a lot of this, and these are, I'll just go in and show you. These are from the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and it's exactly how it looks. It is all books that I have put together in like colors and like subjects. So these are all biblical related, and I will be keeping this on Etsy as a cross post. And then this one here is from the 1950s, and it's filled with amazing illustrations. It's crazy. And so again, I feel that this is rather suitable for Etsy, because people don't just buy things there, because they want a book about the Bible from the 50s. They buy them because of things like illustrations or because of the decor purposes. It's almost not necessarily more aesthetically driven, but aesthetics definitely count for a lot on Etsy. So I feel like these pieces are really interesting to look at and interesting to photograph, and therefore they would appeal to an Etsy audience. And last but not least, I'm just going to show you a few things that I have sold on Etsy that I did not cross post on eBay, and I'll tell you for why. So these kind of things, mugs. I do not usually cross post mugs onto eBay unless there's something really super special about them, mostly because I just don't find that I sell very many. Now there's one or two I've popped up on eBay, but it's few and far between that I will bother to do that. I have a few like vintage football mugs that are going to have a larger crowd seeking them, that are probably going to hang out on eBay as well, so I've thrown those up there, but other than that I really don't bother. And these are things I sell for around the $15 mark, so I don't feel like it's worth paying those listing fees continuously on both platforms when I'm very confident that they're gonna move on Etsy in the end. Other things small, like these wallets that you see here, eyeglasses. Now I sell my eyeglasses for like $35 and above usually, but I don't really list them on eBay unless they are a big brand name. If they're designer glasses, I will definitely put them on eBay. The thing is, on Etsy, I feel that my glasses and things like that are found because I'm putting things like era into my title. So 80s eyeglasses, oversized eyeglasses, hipster eyeglasses, round eyeglasses. These are all things that people are looking for. Again, they're searching a lot of the time through the sort of the channels of the aesthetic as what's leading them in their search terms, as opposed to, looking for Dior or Ralph Lauren or whatever else people tend to be looking for. So I feel comfortable that they will sell on Etsy as opposed to eBay. So I really just don't bother, and I sell them so frequently that I don't really see the point in listing them on eBay at this point. If my sales slowed down, ground to a halt, and I couldn't sell eyeglasses to save my life, yes, I would probably throw them up and see if I could move them on eBay as well. But they just don't seem to go for as much there. And here there's certain things on Etsy, I believe, that allow you to ask for a little bit more of a premium. The more effort that you put into good solid photographs and nice descriptions, you add a little bit of a flourish. And I think the buyer experience on Etsy is a little more centered around finding that one special thing that when you see it, the buyer is like, I have to have this, I've never seen this before, or I may never see this again. And you can really tap into that and kind of make that buyer experience rather special, I think, on Etsy. eBay, it's very efficient. I have no qualms with eBay. I really, I enjoy it for the most part as well, but it is a little bit more different. I find that people go on eBay to look for the thing that they're looking for rather than to necessarily see what's out there. Perhaps I'm wrong. By any means, if y'all have an opinion on that, share it in the comments. I do like to kind of discuss this a little bit. The two platforms are very different, but I find that they complement one another really well for my business. And that's just through experimenting and kind of feeling it out and seeing which platform is doing what at any particular time. So anyway, guys, I hope that shed a little bit of light on my personal process of, where do I list and why do I list those things there. Again, there's almost no science to it as far as I can see, apart from just what's right for your particular business model and what you've experienced as a seller with your particular inventory that pretty much nobody else has. Right? Nobody else has the exact amount of eyeglasses and the exact amount of books, and what you sell well and where it sells well and how much interest. I also tend to mention to people, social media is wonderful. You can definitely sell through social media channels and promote and all those kind of things, but I also like to use it as a bit of a dividing rod. So Instagram, I post a lot there, and I often judge where I'm going to post things or list things, I should say, and whether or not I'm going to cross post on the amount of engagement that I get. And when I say engagement, I do mean likes, but I also mean things like comments, or any questions that come through on messages. The same for Facebook. I tend to be able to see as well who is liking my items. Are they kind of these smaller small business indie hippie blah blah blah, that are really cottoning on to a particular thing that I've put out there on Instagram, or you can sort of judge your audience in a way and see where it might be popular, and Etsy is definitely where I would lean to if that's the kind of demographic that you're attracting with an item. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope that helped a little bit. I'm sorry if I waffled, forgive me. It's the middle of the day and I'm trying to do it quick before the baby wakes up from the nap. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. I'll talk to you at the weekend with most likely a haul video, definitely a sales video. And guys, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I just hope you all have a wonderful day. See you later.